So, taking a look at lesson 7.2, day 2, we're continuing with the idea of supplementary and complementary angles. And before we get into this problem, actually, I want you to pause the video right now and see if you can find x on your own. Now, I hope that you noticed that there's 1, 2, and 3 different angles that form a straight line. So that's like they're supplementary, but we wouldn't actually call these supplementary angles because supplementary angles are two angles that add up together to equal 180. So when there's three, technically you wouldn't say they're supplementary angles, but it's the same idea. So the idea is whatever this angle is right here, and this 70-degree angle right here, and this other angle, notice it has to be the same because it says X. And if there's an X here and an X here and they're the same exact letter, they have to be the same number also. So those three together will make a straight line or add up to 180 degrees. And this is how we can find x by solving this equation. Now I want to point something out before we solve this. It looks a little funny here because this angle right here looks bigger than this, doesn't it? They look like different angles. And in geometry, what you need to know is no matter what it looks like, you look for the proof. So if they give you x and x, they have to be the same even though they don't look like it, right? That's how geometry works. The same thing with like let's say I had an angle like this. This doesn't look like it's perfectly 90 degrees, right? But if I put that box in there, it has to be 90 degrees even though it doesn't look like it. So just remember, anything to do with geometry, don't go by the way it looks, go by the proof, okay? If you have two lines that look exactly the same, don't assume that they are unless they give you some kind of indicator that they're the exact same lengths. Okay, so these have to be the same because of the word problem and because they both are x. So I have x and x, or two x's, plus 70 equals 180. So for solving this equation, we had to add our two x's together first. One x and another x is two x's. So now I can solve by isolating the variable, working farthest away from the variable first, using inverse operations, and seeing the value for x, right? Solving is finding the missing value for x. So what's half of 110? That would be 55. Fine if you grabbed your calculator there. So that means this would be 55. And this would also have to be 55 because they're the same. And I want you to think to yourself right now, how could we check to see that this answer was right? Well, if the answer is right, all three of them together should add up to what number? Yep, straight line makes 180, doesn't it? Okay, so it should add up to 180. Okay, so let's go over here, add those up. I get 10. 10 and 8 is 18, and it looks like it worked out. I want you guys to pause the video right now and see if you guys can find the measure of each angle. To do this problem, you guys had to find what x is first, and then plug that value in here to get the measure of angle E, and plug that number in here also to get the measure or the degree for angle F. So let's see how we would do that. Now, if they're complementary, that means two angles that add up together to get 90 degrees. So one angle is x minus 10 degrees. That's one angle, right? And the other angle is x plus 2 degrees. X plus 2 degrees, right? And those two together, when they are complementary, that means if I took those two and I added them, then I would get, sorry, I'm trying to write straight with this tablet, I would get 90 degrees. So let's go ahead and solve these two. We got x and x combined like terms. That's 2x's. And we have, if I do the rule for subtraction, add the opposite. This is a negative 10. So remember, when they're on opposite teams, we subtract, and whoever has more, that's the sign that you have. So I have a negative 8 over here, right? Negative 10 and 2 is negative 8. Now I can solve this equation. I can go add 8 to both sides, work farthest away from the variable first. Okay. Add 8 to both sides. And I get 2x equals 98. And if I want to keep solving this equation, divide both sides by 2, cross those out. And what's half of 98? Well, half of 90 is 45, right? Half of 8 is 4. So if I add those together, I get 49. Or, no problem, I can just take my calculator, right? I go 98 divided by 2. I get it 49 that way. Or you can take and just divide 98 divided, right? We can do in and out and get 49 that way. So however you want to do it is fine. So we see that x, the value of x is 49. Now, that means this. It doesn't mean that each angle is 49 degrees. It means just x is 49 degrees. So to do this problem, we'd have to put a 49 right here to get the measure or the degree of angle E. Okay, so I put the 49 in there. I take 49 and subtract 10, and I get measure of angle E is 39 degrees. That's what angle E is. Angle E is 39 degrees. Now to get angle F, I put X here. There was a missing number. I found the missing number. That's what solving means, right? Finding the missing number. And I put that 49 here to get the measure of angle F. And I add these two and I get 51 degrees. So let's think about this. If angle F is 51 and angle E is 39, how could I make sure that I did this correctly? And did you say add those two to see if you get 90 degrees? And if you did say that, you're good and you did it correctly. So nice job. All right, let's do one more problem. I want you guys to pause the video right now and try this on your own first. So again, we're using the concept of a straight line. So it's like they're supplementary angles, even though there's 3 of them. Technically, they're not supplementary, right? Supplementary is 2 angles together. But it's the same idea. We add 3 angles together to get 180, or a straight line, or a straight angle. Now, the thing is we have to find x first. Okay, we're going to find x first here. So how do I do that? Hopefully you were able to figure out a way by using the information that they gave you. And what they gave us is that angle WXZ, let's find, YXZ, let's find YXZ. YXZ is right here. And angle WXV is right here. They said that those two together equals 75 degrees. So I can use that fact to write an equation and get the value for x. Because once I know what x is, I can continue and answer this question. And my goal is to find this angle right here, ZXW. So let's get x first. So I get x first by taking these two and adding them together, since the sum means adding, right, is 75. That gives me an equation. Equations means I can find missing numbers by isolating the variable. So let's do that right now. I'm going to add my x's together. I have 5 x's and 7 more x's. That makes a total of 12 x's. And 5 take away 2 is 3. So I go ahead and combine my variables there, my variable expression, and my constants, my numbers without letters, right? So I have 12x's plus 3 equals 75, so I can figure out what x is by isolating x. I subtract 3 from both sides, and I get, let me move over here. I'm kind of cramped over there. I get 12x equals, subtract those 2, I get what, 72. Divide both sides by 12. You guys can divide in and out. You can do it in your head if you're great at that, or you can just go ahead and grab a calculator. 72 divided by 12, and we get a difference of 6. And that's not our answer, though. So some of us would have stopped right there and said, oh, my answer is 6. And And then we see answers, and 105 is one of them. And hopefully we don't see 6. Hopefully, we don't try to trick you by putting this as one of your answers. So I stopped too soon. What I should have done is I should have used that 6, that value for x, to go up here and continue answering this question. So if I have 5x plus 5, this angle right here means 5 times 6 plus 5, because x is 6. I found that. So if I simplify this expression, I get 35 degrees. This is a 35-degree angle, and I got to do it on this side too. What's this angle right here? So I go 7 times 6 minus 2, and I get 7 times 6 is 42, minus 2 is 40, so this angle is 40 degrees. Now, if this is 35, now I should use a different number of arches, right? Because if I use one arch here and one arch here, that means they have to be the same. So I'm going to change this to 2 arches since they're not the same. If they're both 35, I'd put 1 here too. So if this is 35 and this is 40, and altogether the 3 of these make a straight line, can you tell what to do? How are we going to get this 105 now? I'm going to add these 2 up, 35 and 40 together, to get 75 degrees. And if the whole thing makes 180, what's left? Well, I can take these 2 and take them away from the whole thing, and what's left is what's missing. Did you catch what I said? What's left is what's missing. So I could subtract these to find that this angle has to be 105 degrees. All right, let's go ahead and start our review section for the lesson. I want you guys to pause the video and solve this two-step equation now. So whenever we're dealing with fractions, we want to make everything a fraction, right? So I got 6 and 13 eighteenths equals 5/3 n, or 5/3 times something, plus 1/3. So 5/3 times what? Plus 1/3 will give us 6 and 13 eighteenths. Let's figure that out by solving. And we solve by isolating the variable, making it so just n is by itself. Well, before we can do that, we're going to make everything a fraction since I have some fractions. 6 and 13 eighteenths, we'll make that into a fraction. It's fine if you guys grab your calculators right now. Okay, so first we multiply 18 times 6, 18 times 6, and then add the numerator, add that top number. And that's how we get 121. So we have a fraction of 121. Keep the same bottom number. 121 eighteenths is the same number as 6 and 13 eighteenths. Now I'm going to work farthest away from the variable. So I will go over here and I will subtract that constant from both sides. We'll do the coefficient last, right? The number next to the letter we do last. So those go away. I can do that since it's an equation as long as I do it to both sides. Now, when I'm going to add these or subtract these two fractions over here, I have this one. I have 121 eighteenths minus 1/3. Now, subtraction, we're going to draw 2 sticks, add the opposite, put the negative up top so you know what to do with it. However, I can't add these two until I have the same size pieces. Eighteenths is smaller than thirds. So I'll convert this to eighteenths also. And if you forgot how to do that from way back in class, just remember, look at the multiples for both denominators, like 18 times 1, 18 times 2, right? 3 times 1, 3 times 2. Look at the multiples, and the first time they're the same is called the lowest common denominator. So now I can add these up. They're the same size pieces. They're eighteenths. That's how big the pieces are, so I don't add the bottom numbers, but I do add the top. When I'm adding two numbers, when they're on opposite teams, I subtract. So when I subtract these two, I get 115. There are more positives than negatives, so it's positive 115, not negative. Now I can get rid of this coefficient by flipping that fraction upside down and multiplying by the reciprocal, right? Normally we divide by the coefficient, and this is another way of dividing. It's hard to divide fractions, so you do it another way, multiplying by the reciprocal. Another fancy word for that is we're using the multiplicative inverse. Multiplicative inverse means reciprocal, which means it makes these go away, they become ones. Now, let's review real quick, how do we multiply fractions? It's a skill that we always want to have. And multiplying fractions, I don't multiply first. I prime factorize, right? I don't need a same bottom number here. I don't need a common denominator. So I look at 115. I'm going to break that down. 115, we break them down first. We don't multiply first. 5 goes into it. 5 times 23. 23 is prime, so I'm done. Another way to say 115 over 18 is 5 times 23 over 18. But we got to break down 18, right? 18, there's a couple ways to do it. You can say 9 times 2. And then 9 is 3 times 3 times 2. Or you could have said 6 times 3, right? Now, be careful. You guys cannot cross out this 2 and this 2 because this is not a 2. This is a 23. So you can't cross out that 3 either. So just be careful with that. You can only cross out factors. You can't cross out part of a number. I can cross out these 5s though, and I can cross out these 3s. And so what I have left is 23/6. And if you don't see your answer, this is a reduced answer. It's done. But if you don't see your answer because they converted it, then you can convert too. You go in and out, right? 6 goes into 23 3 times. Subtract, we get the same answer. I want you guys to pause the video, solve the next equation. So we're going to solve this equation. I have what number divided by 2 minus 4 will give us 4. Okay, I can do the rule for subtraction here. Draw my elevator and keep that equation all the way down. This is a z. Work farthest away from the variable. That's actually a negative 4, right? So I do the opposite of that, and I get 8. And this is z over 2, which means divided by 2. What's the opposite of divided by 2? Multiply by 2. Cross out our 1s, and we get our answer. This is parentheses, not a 21. We get our answer of 16. If you guys didn't do that right, pause the video, do it again, get it right before you move on. If you're all good to go, pause the video and simplify this expression. So now remember, we only do rule for subtraction. We have subtraction problem. This is actually addition, but this one's subtraction, so I'll do rule for subtraction here. I don't do it right here, though. Right? I don't need to draw 2 sticks there. It's only when it's a subtraction in between 2 numbers, not when there's a minus sign in front. Okay? So I don't do rule for subtraction for negatives. I do rule for subtraction for subtraction. I have a negative 4. I don't draw 2 sticks there. Okay, I have plus r. It's already an addition problem. However, this is a negative problem. Minus 3, I go add the opposite. And this skill here is just going to be helpful for you next year when you're solving multi-step equations and you want to use teams. So that's why we do that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and distribute first. Multiply negative 10 times negative 4 is positive 40. Plus, now rule for subtraction, I can plus in the middle of everything, right? So plus negative 10 times positive r is negative 10r, right? How do I multiply a letter to a number? I just put the letter next to it. Plus negative 3. I don't multiply anything this because there's an addition sign there. Now I combine like terms. Opposite teams mean subtract. There are more positives than negatives, so that's why we get this answer. Now, one thing I need to say to you guys is sometimes, though, now this is a different problem, okay? So don't get confused. This is a different problem. Let me change my color here. If I had let's say I had an R right here, it would be the same. You'd still distribute and combine like terms. The only difference is you would have to add R's to R's. See, in the last problem, we added constants to constants, but sometimes you have to add the letters together when there are letters. So be careful, just be aware of that for future problems on the quiz. All right, pause the video, answer this proportional question. So 2 tubs of dried cranberries cost $8. We always like to keep money on top, right? So $8 on top, 2 number of cranberries on the bottom. How many tubs for $24? So if I got money on top, I'll keep money on top. How many tubs means I don't know that. That's where my letter goes. So now I can cross multiply and divide. Let me make my lines a little bit smaller here. So cross multiply, I got 8 times x equals 2 times 24. And divide both sides by 8. And we get our answer of 6. You guys pause the video and answer the next question. This is a percent question, so we're going to use the percent proportion. So percent proportion is is over of equals percent over 100, right? So let's go ahead and do that. What percent of 4 grams? What percent of 4 grams is? So is over of. That's going to equal percent. I don't know percent this time because they're asking me to find percent. And it's always 100. Percent always goes over 100. Now, when they give me percent, I put it here. When they don't, I put an X or whatever letter you like. Hopefully you remember that multiplying by 100 is just like moving the decimal 2 times. And multiplying number times a letter, you just put the number next to the letter, divide both sides, and it looks like we're going to get an answer of 60%. Now, remember, what was missing was this percent part. Sorry about the sloppiness. So this part was missing, and that's where percent goes. That's why we put percent. Okay? I know some of you can do this by just dividing. 2.4 divided by 4, you'll get 0.6, but then you have to remember to convert. Percent proportion, no need to convert. Pause the video, find the area now. So the area of a circle, and as you guys are starting to see, we're doing the same review problems over and over again. I just think I picked the 7 most important skills that I think you'll need for next year to be successful. And we're going to drill those for the rest of the year so you guys can be ready for 8th grade. So let's go ahead and focus on this. Knowing the area of a circle is important because we'll use it for the volume of cylinders next year and cones. So that's why I want to focus on this one. I just want you guys to have this memorized. Area of a circle is pi r squared. Okay, so we can use an estimation for pi, but look, they gave us diameter, so we got to cut that in half. You can punch that in your calculator and hit divide by 2, or if you know half of it in your head, that's fine too. At this point, we just grab our oh, I forgot my square there, didn't I? Don't forget that. So now let's grab our calculators. Let's go ahead and do this problem. Remember to do exponents before you do multiplication. So don't type in 3.14 first. Type in 10.3 times 10.3. Always do your exponents first, then you can multiply by 3.14. Okay. All right, so we get around 333, and we can see here when we get our answer that it looks like it might be a little bit different, a little bit bigger. And if it's just a tiny bit bigger, then you know that see how they're a little different? Then that just means that whoever made this test question used the pi button instead of 3.14. But like I said in class before, when it comes to pi, if you're close, you are correct. Close means like, a few digits. It doesn't mean like hundreds or thousands apart. That would mean you were wrong. All right, let's go ahead and do our last review problem. Pause the video now and find this volume. So the area of volume, the volume of a prism just means find the area of the base, the bottom, which is 9 times 4 or 36, and then multiply it times the height, times 5. Now, some of you might have done this differently. Some of you might have looked at this as the area of the base, which is fine for this shape because you can consider that the base. For a prism, the base has to be parallel and congruent. And so a rectangular prism like this or a box, you can change up which one you call the base. But whatever you do, whichever ones you decide the bases, like let's say these ones shaded in are the bases, remember the height would be the perpendicular distance between the two bases. If you do that, you're going to get the same answer no matter how you do this. Let's use the first one that I picked, which is call this length, width, and this height. Just multiply, pull this up here for you. Multiply 9 times 4 and then times 5, and it's that simple. We're just hitting some buttons. We're good to go. All right. Whoop, did I check that? Yep, it worked out. Just remember, volume is cubed, right? Area is squared, volume is cubed, and we will see you guys soon.